We have need of a study session
Can't
this
be punched
evening
back.
regarding the Arvada West 64th Avenue sub-area planning effort. I will turn it over to the team.
Goodbye, Jessica.
Brad, Frank, could you grab me a pen and just throw it at my head?
Yes.
Throw it at my head. No, I'll throw it at your head.
Thank you.
I'll get it close to you.
So thank you for the time this afternoon. We really appreciate it. We thought this would be a good opportunity to just do a little check-in with the council and do a progress report on our efforts so far on the 64th Avenue sub-area plan. So Patty is going to lay this out and kind of explain to you where we've been, where we expect to go, and then also if there are any questions that you have, we're happy to take those. And if you have any feedback, we're also happy to get it. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Patty.
Great. Good afternoon, Mayor Simpson and council members. As Jessica mentioned, this is a quick overview and update on the West 64th Avenue sub-area planning effort. A little background information. Sub-area plans focus on targeted areas around the city and further implement our land development code and comprehensive plan. The primary interests of areas that we're interested in are those that experience infill or redevelopment over the next 5 to 10 years. Sub-area planning helps to create long-term vision for development and redevelopment in this particular area. We also include stakeholder committees, planning commission, and city council workshops such as this, as well as multiple public input opportunities during this process. We currently have 3 adopted sub-area plans, and those are the Northwest sub-area plan, Newtown sub-area plan, and Square Lake sub-area plan that were adopted in 2022 and 2023. And the current effort for West 64th Avenue is highlighted in the red area here. And it's generally located on West 64th area with 2 specific study areas along between Sims Street and Yank Way. And this project was initiated last year and we anticipate it to be completed at the end of this year. Communication and public engagement are a very important part of this process, where we include or utilize tools such as social media, email, and articles. We provided mailing notices for our community open houses in addition to the social media opportunities. And then we've held community open house meetings and will continue to do so. We include Ask Arvada surveys to follow up with those meetings. And we have dedicated email and website that provides sub-area plan information and updates, and also provides an opportunity for the community to provide comments and sign up for emails. The draft purpose of this plan is to create a long-term vision and implementation plan to encourage, promote, and support resilient and sustainable community development along West 64th Avenue. The timeline for this project includes 3 phases: visualize, strategize, and realization. The visualization phase is about getting information, reaching out to the community and understanding the area and getting existing condition information to progress to the next phase, where we do additional community engagement to study, learn, and explore. And then we're currently here to get your information to help us develop the ideas and recommendations for the plan, in addition to the community information we have received that I will share later. The West 64th Avenue plan, again, is generally located in 2 areas. The study area 1 is the primary area, focus area for this plan, and it includes looking at land use, design, and other planning related matters along West 64th Avenue between Sims Street and Yank Way. The second study area is north of West 64th Avenue, and it is currently in unincorporated Jefferson County. And we're primarily looking at this area, these properties for land use purposes. During this process, we've held 2 community meetings. We created draft guiding principles to help guide the vision for this plan. And this was developed from listening to the community and our committees. And they include maintaining a diverse mix of uses, promote economic vitality and resiliency, improve and enhance non-vehicular connectivity, and balance housing diversity.
Can I ask you
Yes.
Question about that,
Sure.
as you go, or would you rather wait till?
No, I interrupt at any time and ask questions.
Okay, good.
Fine.
I want to ask you about that guiding principle of balanced housing diversity. So A, what does that mean? And-
Yes.
And B, how does that apply to this area where there's some housing in it, but not very much?
Right.
So what's that really mean? What are you really trying to say?
We're looking at both increasing density and the community, I'll explain later, the community is strongly opposed to
Against
any
that, I
more.
was gonna say.
Yeah, strongly opposed to development, but that was part of the balancing as well, as listening to the community and then also taking a look at what maybe some opportunities there are.
Okay.
So that was the intent for the balancing part of it.
Okay, so I understand that as then, as you go in, somebody, I'm not sure who, probably the planning staff picked these principles that we're gonna do, but I think you heard clearly from the public
Right.
about that. At what point do these guiding principles get refined, get removed or added to or modified or whatever?
Great question. It's actually something that's modified as we go through this process. So it will change. These were the guiding principles we provided at our last community meeting. And so I'll be sharing with you the response that we received to those principles. And so it is something that's ongoing and will change as we go through the process.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
And I'll also just point out that these are also goals that are in the council's strategic plan and also in the former comprehensive plan. So, we're going to get differences of opinion from the public. I think it's important for us to look at those and to really get into some of the nuances. Particularly when we're looking at some of these commercial areas that we anticipate might change,
Okay.
may evolve in the next, 10 to 20 years. That mix of housing may be essential for that site to be successful. But I think what we're going to have to do is probably present to the council some choices and some options that we're going to want to consider now and into the future.
So let me just respond to that. I totally agree. It's totally fine. I mean, these are principles we have in our comprehensive plan and most likely will be in our future comprehensive plan. The trouble is when you take the comprehensive plan that applies to all 44 square miles and you bring it down to 30 acres, not all of the principles that are in the comprehensive plan are going to fit into every 30-acre partition that you can make within the city. So I would only respond to that by just saying, not all of the principles that are in these founding documents belong everywhere. And that ought to be, that's part of what the sub area plan is to suss out what should and what shouldn't. I just wanted to call that out because as I read also, what the public comments about that and what I've heard in public comments about that, I just want to make sure that the plan has the ability to evolve as it goes through the process towards acceptance. And that things don't go in there that then live on in there that, the public's like, what, who decided that? How did that ever happen? When it was clear, kind of what at least the people who responded, what they thought.
Right. Thank you. And that's part of this process is listening to at the workshops and this and our committees, and we'll further refine it. And that's why this is so important to hear this information or your comment so that we can move forward with our next steps and make sure we're including that. And we did hear that strongly from the neighborhoods and those who attended the meetings.
So I have a question
Sure.
too. So, some of the businesses in the area are a little worried that maybe they're gonna be squeezed out. There's a cobbler that's in one of those strip malls. Las Potroncas is in one of the strip malls. A gluten-free bakery. So they're hoping that they're not gonna get squeezed out by this new development. And I said I would come back with an answer for them. Cause I drop by occasionally because I go to Las Potroncas and the cobbler all the time. And I'd say hello and just ask what their concerns are. And this was one of their concerns is they did not want to be pushed out of their stores.
And this is not a project.
No.
This is
No,
not-
I understand that.
This is
Right.
so highly conceptual that
Yes.
there is nothing in this plan that's going to push a business out.
Okay.
So.
And it results in recommendations as well,
Okay.
the final plans. That's how we did the last three plans, as they were recommendations in the final plan after going through this process. So that's, I think, unfortunately, we have to get that message out better.
Yes.
That this is not a project or something for actual development. It's to get input and wanting to see what the community wants in the future, if and when redevelopment were to occur.
Okay, thank you.
You're
because
welcome.
I will take that back to the
Yes,
business.
and that is something we're working on and trying to improve that message as well.
And I think it's an important point to note that if that is a concern that we're hearing, then that's something that we can also echo in the course of the plan.
Yes,
Some of the
thank you.
goals are, we have no desire to push any businesses out either. And so I think if we can clearly demonstrate that in the plan, hopefully that will give folks a measure of comfort.
Right, and that was what I thought, but I said, I'd find out because I don't want to misspeak.
Right.
Put
And then
you
we
in a bad
also,
position.
I was going to mention later, we also did a retail study for this area, and a lot of the recommendations in a retail study were really pretty consistent with what we were asking questions such as placemaking, improving intersections, streetscapes, things like that. And so those are those are typical things we will look at for this plan as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Thank you. So the existing zoning for this area is comprised of mixed use suburban, some residential where the Fremont Elementary School is, and open space. And the open space is the recreation center, Apex Recreation Center. And study area 2, as I mentioned earlier, is in Jefferson County. I did look up the zoning for their Jefferson County, and it is primarily A1, which is agricultural, with one parcel at the top part of the area that was PD, which is planned development, so it has its own specific regulations.
And Rob, did we not we've had some conversations with a potential buyer of that property that they're indicating they may or annex into the city too. So that study area is under a lot of transition right now, so.
Yes.
Yeah, so the question I would have is, I understand the current zoning is MXS. But my question would be, what was the zoning before we adopted our new land development code? Do you happen to know
Good
that?
question.
A lot of this was B4, the old B4 heavy commercial district.
Right.
And then a
I would have
mix of
thought B or
PUD.
C or something like that,
Yeah, and then a bunch of PUD.
and then some
zoning.
PUD, okay.
But yeah, if there's a planned development there, I understand they may want you, don't they sort of need to if that development wants water and sewer?
If they don't currently have access to water and sewer, yeah, they would have to annex in.
Mhm.
Plus, if they're, we're hearing, I think it was a residential developer and they're looking for kind of a single family product. There are some challenges with it. It's so preliminary right now, but they would need to annex in if they need access to any of our services. So yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I think that's what, we just don't want to ignore it because eventually it might be a part of the city. So yeah. just
Totally.
And it's my understanding we receive pre-applications for inquiries to develop in this area about every 3 to 5 years. So it is something that we do hear something about occasionally and it's primarily residential.
Yeah.
Yeah, Good Hills Regional Housing owns a small piece of that. I
Yeah.
think they're trying to sell it.
They're
but,
selling it.
Yes.
But yeah, there's still a piece that, and the whole idea with that study area is not to get into the details about
No.
placemaking or anything, but really to have a community conversation about what uses should be there. And of course, what we heard was keep it open space, but yeah.
exactly.
Except let me know.
Yeah, so.
Yes.
I get to use it now, but I.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
And we'll have that in a couple more slides as well.
Sorry, jump again.
No, that's okay. I think it's good. Any other questions? Okay. Our community engagement efforts thus far have been an community open house, which was our kickoff and introduced the plan and get some preliminary information from the community in August of last year. It was followed up by a Speak Up Arvada survey. And then the second community open house was December 4th, where we asked some questions to try to get a little bit more direction on what their vision or what they would like to see in this area. And I'll present those questions later in the responses. And again, that was supplemented by a Speak Up Arvada survey. There were approximately 100 people plus at the first meeting. The second meeting had, I think, 90 plus, and they were well attended. So we were really happy with that. The survey's not as much of a great response, I believe, because there were many that came to the community open house and expressed their opinions.
Quick question.
Sure.
Do you think there was a significant overlap of attendees between 1 and 2, or that it was primarily new attendees at number 2 that didn't also attend number 1?
Number 2 did have some additional attendees, for the reason that we heard from the community from the first one to expand the influence area, and which we did. We included around the study area too. We ventured out further to include them, and I also included tenants as well. So it wasn't just to the property owners, those mailing notices. So I think I did hear from a few of those residents during that second meeting.
Okay, so 190-ish total between the two, but how many unique residents do you think?
I would say at least 50% were repeat.
So around
participants.
150, probably total all-in residents. Okay.
Yes. And then we have technical committee meetings, and that's comprised of our staff with technical expertise. We had that in July. We'll hold another meeting after this workshop and tomorrow's planning commission workshop, and to provide the input to them as well, and work forward on drafting hopefully some draft framework items for the plan. And same with our steering committee, which is comprised of external stakeholders. We included a lot of property owners, organizations that live with, that are within that area, such as the churches and the school district. And we're always open to any other suggestions if you know of any active neighborhood participants that would like to participate. I had 3 recommendations, but unfortunately they did not participate or attend. So I would love to venture out and get a little more representation from the community if you have any suggestions. These comments are really summarized from both community open houses, and I think it seems like to me you've read through these. Yes. I tried to synthesize, but there really was a strong opposition to no more apartments and high residential development. The developments along Ward Road that are near 58th or 59, that was one that was continually expressed to me. That's not what they wanted. They felt there was enough high density and residences in the area. The majority of their concerns were related to the increased traffic and that the infrastructure is not able to accommodate the higher residential, future residential being expanded. They wanted to maintain the single family residential areas, and quite a few people expressed that they felt this was already a mixed use, a horizontal mixed use area, and again, no more residential or high density. And another important component was improving the sidewalks and trails. There's a lot of safety concerns for pedestrians and non-vehicular modes of users along West 64th Avenue. Pedestrian and bicycle safety was a strong concern, especially at primary intersections, and that we need to enforce the traffic laws. Then some miscellaneous comments included really wanting more local and diverse businesses and doing anything to keep the ones we have. They had a lot of comments about wanting to keep the vitality of the economic retail and commercial areas along there. Again, we did a retail plan that helps with identifying some needs for that as well. And also just really don't want to see anything changed other than we want to get improved maintenance of our existing infrastructure out there. So as a follow-up at our second meeting, we wanted to get a little more, hone in a little bit more on what their vision really was intended to be. The part of this was looking at parking areas along the corridor. There are 3 large commercial developments along there. 3 of them are on the corner of West 64th Avenue and Ward Road. The other one is located at Sims Street and West 64th Avenue. And so those were the 4 that we looked at. And based on our parking regulations in the city, many of them were overparked. And so that gives an opportunity for placemaking opportunities, or also not that it was desired, but it also helps with redevelopment and maybe and increasing some commercial or housing opportunities in those areas that are overparked. The largest excessive parking occurred at the 24-hour fitness and First Bank development, which is on the southwest corner of Ward and 64th Avenue. So we asked, we had a map that showed all of those and the excess number of spaces. And we asked if they felt the parking was excessive, adequate, or deficient. As you can see, the overwhelming response was it's adequate. And however, there were some comments saying there wasn't excess parking and that it also depended on the day of the week and the time as to when the parking may not be, could accommodate the users of that particular development.
Well, I can tell you King Supers at 64th and Ward from 7:30 to about 10 is they have the unofficial seniors shopping.
Oh.
So I take advantage of that. You get in, you can get out. But then after 10, boom, it fills up even during the weekdays. It's pretty, it's very interesting how that parking lot is. And then the 24-hour, I swear to goodness, that lot is full 24 hours. People are working out at like midnight. It's crazy.
But it includes that entire development.
Right,
So
yeah.
there's some large areas in
Right.
between.
I'm just sharing
Yes.
what my
Yes, no, I
experience is
appreciate
with
that.
those two lots.
Yeah. Did you think that the 24-hour fitness, since you frequent there more often than I, is it just primarily just closer to the building that it gets really crowded?
It actually spreads
Spreads
almost
out.
all the way
Okay.
to Burger King.
Okay.
I don't know
Oh,
what they're
wow.
doing over there. I don't know if people are using it as a gathering place to park and
Okay.
then go forth and conquer,
Uh-huh.
which kind of makes sense. Maybe that's why they're doing some of that outlying parking.
Okay.
But yeah, it's always full.
Oh, that's great to know. Thank you.
Mhm.
Then we also asked connectivity and also improving the public safety along primary corridors. It's a goal of ours to improve connectivity from our existing trails and along major streets to improve connectivity and make it safer for our pedestrians and non-vehicular users. We asked them to identify pedestrian and bicycle connection locations that are needed or need to be improved upon in study area 1. We heard this quite often was West 64th Avenue and Ward Road intersection is unsafe to cross. It's strongly avoided. And that one was the largest one that we've heard throughout this whole process of having major concerns. Excuse me.
I have to agree. I think the stoplight is merely a suggestion.
Mhm.
And I'm not kidding. The light turns red, 3 cars go through it either way. And I've been beeped at for not going and then far through the intersection. So we either need more enforcement out there or something, you know, that is a dangerous.
And I will mention that that's part of the state highway system.
Right.
So
Oh,
it's
yeah.
controlled by CDOT and I know that
I've
working.
yelled at Bob about it.
Yeah, yeah. And I know it's been identified on the forthcoming transportation system plan as well. So, yeah, we shared all of this with transportation as well. And I know some of these are identified in that plan. But there are challenges with CDOT
Right.
also.
This is my hood, that's why. I
Yeah,
know so much about it.
well, I appreciate it.
And I think one comment about the bike lanes, I think if we look at a really kind of our most standard treatment of bike lanes right now, which is we're just gonna paint a line in the road and assume everybody can abide by that. I think especially when you're dealing with busier corridors like this, if we do decide that we want to move forward with a bike lane out there, it needs to look and feel a little different than a typical bike lane. It's gonna have to be protected. It's going to have to be somewhat separated. You know, if we're ever gonna try to encourage that connectivity, you know, with especially getting people to transit, if they want to use this route, we should make it safer. But I think we're gonna have to really look carefully at what safety looks like in those areas, so.
And it is identified West 64th Avenue as an on-street bike lane, but as Jessica mentioned, it's pretty narrow. Those are 2 small lanes. So as a bike rider, I don't think I would feel safe riding on the street as well. So that is something we can take a look at as well in the design of maybe a streetscape, future streetscape for redevelopment and include some kind of connectivity for non-vehicular users, so.
I like the wide sidewalks out there. I
Yeah.
will say that. So you'll see people riding their bikes and scooters on the sidewalks, which I know, but there's.
Because it feels safer. but it's also
Absolutely.
really challenging if you're a pedestrian or if you're a mom with a stroller and you have to navigate that with a
Yeah.
bike or with a.
And I
scooter.
agree with you wholeheartedly, but when I see the kids going to school, they're not in the traffic and I don't want them to be in traffic.
Right.
Because again, while the traffic lights are a suggestion, so is the speed limit. People are going way over 35 and 40 on 64th.
Do we have accident records about that intersection? Is it higher than normal there?
I don't know.
I believe it is, and again, it's in the transportation system plan. I could take a look at it, but I believe that's part of the reasoning for looking that it was identified on that plan. I can look further, but I'm fairly certain it is.
But you have a lot of driveways, you have a lot of
Yes.
access points in the
Yes.
commercial
Yeah.
developments, you have a lot of traffic that is focused on King Supers, is that over there? Yeah, King Supers, 24-hour fitness, they're not really looking for pedestrians, they're not looking for cyclists.
Exactly
These are those
right.
inherent challenges when you're looking at commercial corridors, but
Mhm.
there are things that can be done. I think as we look, this plan could be 10 years, 20 years out, we could be looking at that future scenario.
Mhm.
There could be opportunities to maybe close up some of those excessive access points, do some things that can make it safer. But
And so adding on to that, a lot of concern was for the students, both at Fremont Elementary and the
Yeah.
high school as well, and the traffic volumes associated with the high school too. So I would say those were the three primary concerns. This was an interesting one, though, that came up was on Ward Road, just north of the study area. There's a Yankee Doodle
Mhm.
open space, and a lot of people would like some kind of connection there because they must utilize it to cross. So that is something I'm not sure can happen, but in working with Public Works, they're doing a stormwater plan update for that area. So I'm trying to see if that's something that could be included or considered in the future, at least at that crossing.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah.
I run that, and so, yeah, I know
Okay.
exactly what
Yeah.
you're talking about.
Yes. And another way to improve economic vitality and also making places more appealing to users is having the ability of having placemaking within a development. And placemaking means different things to different people. It can be a garden, it can be a park, it can be just a little social area to sit and greet and meet people. And then also one element that was really definitely conveyed to us is there were several people who would like that to be combined with commercial users in the area as well. So outside areas, so they can sit and enjoy maybe their coffees and not in addition to the existing retail or commercial businesses. So placemaking, we asked specific areas if they thought there were other that were more, that they would like to see more of those opportunities. And a side note to this as well is when we have redevelopment, we also include urban park requirement. And since these commercial developments were created before that occurred, if they were to do major redevelopment, they would have to include an urban park. But that is something we use throughout the rest of the city. So that's another way to make placemaking as well. And the places that was the highest place in the responses and number of responses was Friendly Square Commercial Center, which is on the northwest corner of West 64th and Sems. And then second to that was the 24-hour fitness. They thought those were the better locations for placemaking opportunities. So getting back to Councilmember Marriott's comment earlier about higher density, we did present a concept for the study area too. First of all, as mentioned earlier, it's located within unincorporated Jefferson County. And so therefore, their zoning doesn't apply to us. However, if they were to be annexed into the city, they would have to choose zoning at this point that is consistent with our comprehensive plan, future land use designations. And currently on the left side, study area 2 has suburban residential on the south third, and then the northern part is low density residential. Oh, excuse me, medium. I'm sorry, the bottom portion is medium density and the top part is suburban residential. We did present to them to get a feedback on their comments to see if we increased the density opportunities in this area. Where we presented a concept to increase it to high density on the southern part, medium density in the middle, and then retain the northern part of suburban residential to be able to be more consistent with what's existing around it. And also on the south side, there is higher density immediately adjacent to this study area. That was a strong no from the community. They did not want any increased density, no more residential, and really quite a few comments for retaining the area as it currently exists. It's not really been developed. There's just a few single family residences within 6 properties there. And they would like to keep the trees and the habitat for as open space, and then also to keep it for the animals and retain the natural habitat in that area.
We'll have to ask the developers if they're willing to donate this to the animals.
Yes, yeah,
Because
yeah.
unfortunately, there's some market pressures that
Yes.
we can't avoid. So it's duly noted, but it's also,
Yes.
this is somebody else's private property.
Exactly. And I did try to convey that. But there was a couple of still, we'd like to see it designated as open space in our comprehensive plan. Our next steps are to continue with technical and steering committee meetings in response to your input and the community here at the end of this month. Then our next public community meeting, which we would like to present some draft framework ideas for the community's feedback and input. And that also will be conveyed through future workshops with you and Planning Commission. That is anticipated for the end of the summer. And then again, we'll follow up with Speak Up Arvada survey to whatever information or questions we asked at that community meeting. And I'm hoping to do the first draft of the plan in late fall, early winter, and then come back to Planning Commission and City Council for workshops in winter of this year and to complete the project at the end of this year or the beginning of next year. Do you have any further questions? Yes.
I have a question, and maybe a comment, but certainly a
Okay.
question. Rob, you probably might know the answer to this. What's allowed in the MXS zone district? Can you give us kind of a brief, just layman's description of that?
Yeah, so it's commercial, retail, office, pretty much any type of use, residential with the conditional use.
Excuse me.
Okay, and stop at that. Residential with a conditional use for first floor residential, correct?
No, it's for any residential.
Any
development.
residential.
Yeah, so any residential development would require.
The one that required a conditional use permit for first floor residential, that's an MX zoning. That's a mixed use
mixed
zoning
use.
thing also.
I don't.
I thought it was-
There's MXN.
Neighborhood.
Yeah.
Right,
Okay.
okay, that's.
So a little bit lower
That's
in
what-
intensity.
right.
Okay.
So MXS, that zoning is adequate if somebody wanted to buy one of those shopping centers and clear it out and build residential there, that it's already zoned properly for that. But it would require a conditional use permit for any residential, not just first floor residential. Okay,
So it would be required to go through a public hearing
public
process.
process.
And so that's where this plan can come in and say,
Yes.
maybe as a community, we'd accept a certain amount of commercial on these properties. But then ultimately it would be the council's decision as to what that means
Yeah,
moving forward.
right,
And
okay.
I know there's a lot of concern about maintaining retail because that's our tax base too. So-
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's
We talked about
exactly
that.
what I just wanted to bring up.
Yeah.
I was around when we adopted our new land development code, and these areas, like you had said before, were zoned different. And of course, over the years, they had gotten highly segmented with PUDs interspersed in amongst the zoning, and part of the new land development code was get rid of all of the council approvals and do a little more use by right and kind of clean that stuff all up. And I think we did that, but I had a concern back then, and I still have the same concern today, although the state legislature may be fixing that by making Colorado a a less desirable place to be. But is that, currently or over the last 10 years, we've had all kinds of market opportunities in residential. If you want to develop residential, there are buyers for that. There's butts for those seats. And there hasn't really been the same market opportunities over the last 10 years for commercial property. And my concern was that we would end up allowing a bunch of our commercial property to be converted to residential use. And we would lose our ability to generate and collect sales tax and really put the city in a bad spot. And I thought about places exactly like this area. And I think the residents told you clearly kind of the same thing that I was saying back then. And that is, they really want to guard against something happening to where this becomes, highly residential, and not so much just for the density, but just the commercial activity. And, there's several things can be true at once. One of the things that's true is that, on a national scale, national level retailers are certainly pulling back and withdrawing, and nationally there's commercial space available. But locally, there's kind of not, and I don't know if you did a survey in this area, but if my memory serves me, I don't know that there's any vacancy of commercial space, or not much. I mean, there might be suites available for rent in the First Bank building or something like that, but particularly the retail that's mostly full, if not completely full. But if there was redevelopment, that's where, that's where it comes into play. And I would want to make sure that, contained within a sub area plan might be some protections from that happening. In other words, if somebody were to buy the shopping center at 64th and Sims and just say, look, we've determined it's economically feasible for us to just clear it out, and we want to build 350 units there, and it's zoned for it. We're going to come and ask for permission to it. And the sub area plan doesn't lean one way or another. They've got a case to go ask to develop that property the way they see fit. I would much prefer that our sub area plan, at least at this point, because sub area plans, they age obviously and have to be updated over time, but at least at this point reflect kind of our current conditions, that we would like to protect some of the commercial space, some of the retail, some of our ability to generate sales tax and collect sales tax, and that having, this type of retail clearly works because there's not much, if any, vacancy there. And if vacancies do come, they do get filled. Again, we don't have chronic vacancy problems around these types of centers. The big grocery anchor that went away, Safeway, has left King Soopers. It's highly unlikely that King Soopers is going to go away. They don't have another spot close by where they can replace that store with. And, the Walmart grocery store out at 64th in Indiana went away years ago. And so, it's probably right-sized for the market, and it's going to always be a draw for commercial uses. And so the ancillary commercial opportunities are going to always be there. I would just hate to see them get priced out by this appetite for residential development. Sure. And I think that the residents clearly told you that essentially we're telling you that same thing too.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think at some point though, it will be a balancing act, like Friendly Square. It's definitely showing its age, and at some point, they may want to redevelop. But the question would be then, do we say at that corner that you have to, as part of this plan, that we would suggest maintaining the commercial square footage? And maybe you can add a floor or two of residential.
Residential,
above it, but-
yeah.
Absolutely. And I guess that's what I'm
Mixed
saying with the
use,
sub
yeah.
area plan would be
Yeah.
that, if someone wants to buy these properties in redevelopment, they should. But the plan and the zoning should be such that commercial areas stay commercial. And, I worry about when they say, okay, Friendly Square is 9 acres. We're going to buy it and redevelop it, and we're going to put 3,000 square feet of commercial space up by the street. And then we're going to do all, 300 units behind it. And so it's still mixed use, but you're trading, 80,000 square feet of commercial space for 3,000 square feet of commercial space. Like, that's what I would want the plan to speak to, that at least at this point, at least at the time of the adoption of the plan, that would not be our vision at all. Because otherwise you end up with, you know, it's kind of mixed use, minimal mixed use or mixed use in name only, where you know, you build 300 apartments and a Starbucks out front and you say, see, look, it's a mixed use development. And it's really not a mixed use development at that point. It's just a residential development undercover. And I think that's what I would personally want to see us not find ourselves in the position of that.
Yeah, and that's great. I mean, that's
It
the
is.
opportunity with this plan versus, you know, with the King Super site, and I know you were involved with that, Morgan Ralston Creek, where they came in and it was kind of an ad hoc negotiation on how
Yeah.
much commercial space they'd have.
Yep.
Where here we would have an opportunity to say, with this plan, we think, you know, a majority of commercial square footage should be maintained on every site or whatever we
Yeah,
want to say.
something like that. I think that's right. But I think that's probably what the residents were trying to tell you. I don't know exactly what questions you asked and how they answered them or all that, but seems to me that that's what they're saying is around in our neighborhood. Look, we value the having a restaurant or two to go to, or a cobbler or cleaners or a liquor store, whatever it is, in addition to King Supers. And boy, we'd really hate to see that replaced by a bunch of high density residential. Regardless of whether the market would allow it to happen or not.
Definitely, and I think there's also the opportunity to talk to them a little bit about, obviously, if we preserve that commercial opportunity, there's more opportunity for commercial spaces. If there's some additional residential, that's more customers. So it's that balance that we want to work with, but yeah, definitely understand your point.
If we had chronic vacancy in those commercial areas, I would agree, then that's the sell, right? Like, oh, we're gonna bring in more people and that'll help fill this chronic vacancy, but I don't see, and I haven't ever in my whole life seen chronic vacancy in that area. That doesn't mean I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to any residential there. I would just be opposed to it at the cost of the commercial.
Yeah.
And so if it's additional, then that's fine. I mean, some of this space, obviously the southwest corner of 64th Ward is awkward. It's awkwardly laid out, you know, it was built as a anchor grocery store with a strip center, and then some pads grew up around it. And so, you know, to me, I would love to see that redeveloped into a little more cohesive, coherent kind of commercial development. I think that'd be fine. But I'd hate to see that get redeveloped into a more cohesive commercial development that goes from 100,000 square feet of space to 10,000 square feet of space, so that 350 units of living can be also added. So it's like, if it gets redeveloped, that'd be great. If the 100,000 square feet stays 100,000 square feet and you know, 200 residents were added as well, I don't think anybody would have any problem with that.
Yeah.
But it's the loss of the
Sure.
commercial space.
I just want to add on to or agree with what John just said. Because like I said, the businesses were worried that it would be scraped and turned into residential. But if it can be a mixed use, I think that would be fantastic. Something I would be concerned about would be parking and a little bit of traffic. But also West Town, which was supposed to be mixed use, and now people are living in the first floor rather than it being retail. I want to make sure that doesn't happen too, that residential doesn't override the retail portion that we're planning. So
I think you're both teeing up a bigger conversation that we really need to have about mixed use and about the necessity for us to be protecting commercial spaces and the reality of how challenging it is to fill those mixed use spaces.
Right.
It's a bigger conversation than we can have tonight, and I think it's something we definitely want to involve economic development. Katie Press has been involved in this conversation. I know she's been up to speak with you before. We, I think, are really going to have to talk about this idea of, if this is a commercial area, does it need to be mixed use? Maybe it just needs to be back to commercial, and that needs to be our focus. At this point, I think it's going to be really challenging for us to continue to say that mixed use is an equation that is always going to be successful. So
fantastic.
we need to explore this a bit more. We'll come back with some ideas for you, but points are well taken, and we don't have that many viable commercial areas throughout the city. We need to protect what we have. There are plenty of places where we can look at infill for residential development, including some of the places that are already here. There are already some higher density residential. Those may change over time. So I think we just need to look at that balance again.
Excellent. Thank you, Jessica.
I think there is some evidence that this is valued commercial because it's been, especially the intersection at Sims, that's been commercially blighted for quite some time, and yet it is still full. Now, the quality of the tents, you can talk about that. Same thing with the old Safeway site. The Safeway site was empty for quite some time. And to have it as a 24-hour fitness is not a best use for a piece of property
It's
like that.
vulnerable.
However, it is a valued piece of commercial property, and I wouldn't want to see that gone. I think you're exactly right. Assuming that mixed use is always going to be successful is a bad assumption. Fortunately, we're in a great place, especially on the Friendship Center, in that across the street, we have the opportunity to have some more rooftops that can support that.
Yeah,
over
and as
time.
for how we can maybe protect some of our existing commercial areas, we do have a strategy that we're going to be rolling out between planning and code enforcement that we've already talked about. I know Katie has brought this up of we need to go out and make sure that all of our commercial centers are maintaining a standard of quality, that their signage is up to speed, that their landscaping is where it's supposed to be, that things are maintained properly, and that we, as I think Katie had mentioned, we set the tone to allow for good commercial development to come in here, whether it's a new tenant, you know, a new anchor, whatever that's gonna be. They're gonna look at those site conditions and make decisions based on that. So we want to help to make that a little bit better. That's something that we're gonna be implementing immediately. So, but the bigger question about what do we protect and how hard are we gonna fight for those areas? I think we need to really.
Well, we
fight for
need to
them.
protect the commercial for sure.
I agree.
I agree.
Wholeheartedly.
On this line, I have a quick question. I don't want to discriminate against any form of user, especially one that is generally considered to be a very, very good neighbor and property caretaker. But I do have concerns with the amount of commercial space we'd let go to churches. I mean, you look at some of these very, very large mega churches that we have. They're amazing community partners. They're excellent. Like, I don't want to diminish them in any way, but churches are tax exempt. There is inherently a loss to the city when a commercial moves in, when a church moves into a commercial space. Especially, great example, 66th and Wadsworth. We had a gym in that location, now it's Altitude Church. Again, fabulous neighbor, community partner, but that is a massive commercial space that could have housed any number of things that is now in perpetuity very likely to not serve the city's commercial needs. So I just have some concerns, because it's a major trend for commercials to move, or churches to move into commercial spaces, about allowing that to take away these valuable spaces we do have. Because I agree with John and Sharon, we have to protect the commercial zones that we have, and this is a core one for the west side.
Duly noted, and I think we need to be mindful of that. We can take a look at some of the zoning that we have out there. You know, one thing that I've seen in other communities is that churches often take over industrial lands because it's cheaper. And it's surprising to see out here, all the churches that are looking at viable commercial land, that they can afford it and that they're able to do this, because most of the time that is not the case. So I think we want to protect all of those areas to make sure that they're being used for the uses that were prescribed and they don't become this kind of fallback option when something else doesn't look any better financially.
That's exactly what happened with the one on 66. I remember talking with your predecessor about it and being like, why did we let this massive site that could go to any number of things go to a church? Because they flipped it pretty quick time. It didn't sit vacant for long. He said, well, they activate the space and they keep it clean. And I'm like, that's great, but that doesn't negate the loss to the city's revenues. Sure.
So, how do you feel about Storyline and Revive? Because they have retail spaces at Revive. They have the printing place, they have a couple of different businesses in there. The bar, the dance, something else. And then at Storyline, they bought the entire strip mall, but they still have Lukey and a hairdresser. And is Malone's part of that too?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think that if we don't want to necessarily exclude them, because some of those malls, they do have some commercial interests in them.
I agree that
So-
they do, and they're very good owners. I'm not trying to negate that. I'm just trying to note that if you don't watch it, sometimes you start to see a little bit of a creep there where you lose your commercial spaces. The Storyline takes up what could be a huge, huge commercial operation. Again, I love Storyline. I'm not condemning. I'm simply noting the fact of the matter that they do sort of have a massive commercial space that they use that is tax exempt.
Yeah,
And
they
part of-
also had two failing businesses in there, right?
Yeah, I mean, part of this is how do we kind of follow the breadcrumbs? Why did they go there? What were the factors that enabled that to happen? Is it because they were failing? Is it because that's not a viable commercial site? I mean, there's a lot that we need to do to get kind of to the heart of what changes the conditions so that a very viable commercial area is not able to sustain and support itself. And how do we get at that? And it's a huge challenge. So thanks for bringing it up.
As someone who looks at and buys commercial property periodically, I can tell you exactly what it is. Currently, and for a while, a good long while here, industrial property is more expensive than commercial retail property. And it's because we make it's difficult to develop industrial property around here without it being super expensive. And until there's a reasonable supply of industrial property on the market, the price in industrial property is going to be really high. And as it's really high, the people who can be industrial, can be commercial, they'll shop everything and they'll buy commercial.
Yeah, that
It's
makes
easy.
sense.
It's easy enough.
I really appreciate all the comments, and that was part of the reason we selected this area, knowing that it was aging and changing and having these opportunities that may affect what these concerns you had. So thank you.
And frankly, I'm concerned about the 24-hour fitness site because there aren't a lot of those left. And from a business model, is it going to turn into something else? And I think our goal is, can we turn it into something greater if it's not going to be what it is today, instead of let it fall to the wayside and kind of be victim to some of these issues. So thank you for the feedback.
The residents would love a Trader Joe's, we all know.
I know. Always popular.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time and your
He's
comments.
worked at getting a Trader Joe's forever.